Hello SCNs. Today I'm going to take you through the topic of genetics, and specifically in this lesson we're going to cover the concept of variation. You're with me, Arthur Promise Chibundu, and I'm going to take you through biology from now until the time that you're going to be sitting for your MSCE exams. Now, let's not waste time. Let's get into it. Now, when you hear about the word genetics, what comes to mind? So we're discussing about the concept of passing on of characteristics. This is a concept known as heredity. Heredity, the study of heredity is what is called genetics. So, my definition topic, and this is the definition that you need to take to heart. Genetics is the scientific study of heredity. Now, to understand the concept of genetics, we also need to understand, to start with the understanding of variation. We need to understand how variation occurs in plants, how variation occurs in animal species, right? Now, I'm going to explain in detail what variation is. The topic of genetics is flagged as one of the toughest in MSCE biology, and if you follow vividly, you are going to find that it is actually the easiest topic. Okay, now let us start by defining what variation is. When you hear the word variation, it comes from the word vary, and mawati vary amatanthauza kuti differ, to differ kusiyana pakati pa zinthu ziwiri. Okay, so when we say variation, we're talking about the differences within observable and non-observable characteristics in a given species of organisms. Now, the key there should be one, difference, right? Kusiana. And another keyword should be observable and non-observable characteristics. There are things that you see. For example, skin complexion. But there are some things that you don't see. Those are non-observable characteristics. Okay? So that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, variation is used to place each individual organism in its own taxonomic group. For example, given a dog and a domestic fowl, we use differences such as the presence of mammary glands, skin covered with fur, or skin covered with feathers to place the dog in a class Mammalia and the domestic fowl in a class Aves. So, as I have described in the definition, these specific differences are the ones that help us to classify organisms. Okay, so in genetics, we will look at the differences within a particular characteristic in a given species. For instance, in a dog species, all we have, for instance, in a dog species, all have skin covered with fur, but the fur coat has different colors. So, as you can see, we're going to be discussing about what causes these specific differences in these species. What is happening at the submolecular level? Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing in this topic. Okay, so in animals and plants, variations are observed in their skin color and actually but you can also see variations in height, color of eyes, the blood group, blood group or blood group. We also have sex. Sex, we're talking about whether someone is male or female. That is a variation. We can also talk about the shape of the nose. And flat. That is a variation. We can also talk about the color of hair and the fingerprint patterns. Okay, so in plants, those were variations in animals. In plants, you could have differences or variations in the length of the stems, the color of flowers, the shape of pods, the color of the pods, and the color of seeds. These are the variations that are there in animals and plants. Sometimes maybe an examiner could want to ask you to see if you know anything about variations, and they would say, can you give 2 variations that are there in animals? It is a simple question, of course. Komano, this is what you could say. The variation could be height, color of eyes, blood group, sex, shape of nose, and so on and so forth. Now, what causes variations? Now, for you to be able to attack this question, this is actually an examinable question. They could simply ask you, what are the causes of variations? Give 5 causes of variations. So, for you to be able to attack this question, first of all, remember what a variation is. And we have said what variations are differences in organisms. Characteristics, amasianisa one organism from the other. What causes those differences? So, first of all, we have segregation of chromosomes during gamete formation and crossing over during meiosis. I think munapanga cell division in Form 3. So I think you should have a background about meiosis and mitosis. Another cause of variations is mutations, where my genes are and then they are changing from good to abnormal. That is a mutation. You can also have sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction, pamakala zygote, many mabangidwa form from 2 people, 2 parents, right? The male and the female. What do? They share. Meaning they contribute my genes, my characteristics are also to form one thing. Obviously, the form is going to be different from the other organisms. And another thing is the environment, age, and heredity. Now, for the next deck of slides, we're going to really dive deep into these variations, into these causes of variations, and to help you understand how any of these things cause variations to be there in a species. Now, the first thing, as I have said, is segregation of chromosomes during gamete formation. So as gametes are formed, chromosome number in a cell is halved. At this time, chromosomes in a pair are separated and they move to different gametes. The gametes that are formed, therefore, are not similar in their genetic composition. You get me there, right? So it's like you have a normal cell, so it's like you have a normal cell, and then it is being split into 2 during the process of meiosis. Gamete formation imajitika during the process of meiosis. So during that process, you are forming 2 sets of characteristics in 2 different cells. So when one of those is forming a zygote, another one that will come at a later time will not be the same as this one. So that is how segregation of chromosomes, that division, actually causes there to be a difference in the genetic makeup of organisms. Another thing that I explained when I was introducing you to the causes is mutation. Now, I said this is the sudden change in the structure. This is a sudden change in the structure and amount of genetic material in the cells of an organism. Okay, mutations could be caused by what? You know the causes of mutations you learned in Form 3. What are the causes of mutations? Right? So those causes of mutations could cause the genetic makeup of a material of a cell to be changed, and when it is changed, it is going to be different to other organisms. Okay. Now let us proceed to sexual reproduction. With sexual reproduction, it is causing a variation because the zygote is being formed from 2 cells from different parents, and these parents, they have their own different characteristics. They are contributing different different genes, and that is why we're having a variation because of sexual reproduction. Another factor that causes a variation is the environment. The environment in which an organism lives determines how it will grow and how characteristics in it will be developed. Okay, so for example, you might see that some people, they become darker when they are in very hot areas, and some people become light in complexion when they're in cool areas. That is the environment at play. Now, the environment does a lot when it comes to changing the genetic makeup of organisms. For example, certain plants they grow better in for example in countries like South Africa, China, kunoku amakanira kupanga survive. And even if you try to force things zoti ma plants aja kupanga grow makandi mwina ma fruits ake oti satanzi bwinobwino oti onyenchera and something like that, it's because there is a change in the environment. There is a variation that is being brought about by the environment itself, and that variation is because some plants favor specific conditions to do better. Another characteristic that is another factor that influences characteristics is age. Okay, so age causes variations to be there in an organism. For example, you could have different people. For example, in your household, for example, you have people in different age groups. You will see that they have different characteristics based on age, because age in itself it is a factor that causes variations. Why? Because certain characteristics develop when a person is growing up. Okay, so because some characteristics may develop at a later time, there is a difference that is being brought about by age. Now, let us look at the types of variations. Variations are grossly divided into two types. You can have continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Okay, now I'm going to explain what these two terms mean. Komano, before we proceed, what do you think we mean when we say continuous variation? And what do you think we mean when we say discontinuous variation? You have 5 seconds, or you can pause the video to answer that question, and then you can proceed. I'll start with discontinuous variation. This is a variation whereby individuals in a given species, they show definite or distinct differences in a given characteristic. You get it? So it's like you have a definite limits of the quantities that are being studied. For example, you can have a group of people, and then you want to classify them based on their sex. You are going to have 2 entities, either male or female. You have actually managed to differentiate them based on that variation. So that kind of variation is called discontinuous, because it ends at a specific limit. Now, an example of an activity that you can do to demonstrate discontinuous variation is the tongue rolling ability. Of course, there are more that you would try, but I remember when I was doing my secondary school, this was one of the questions that we were ever asked. It might be on a mock or the manual exams, I'm not so sure, but it was one of the questions, and they asked us to actually do an experiment to depict or to demonstrate a discontinuous variation, and tongue rolling was the answer. What you are supposed to do there is, you could say, we're going to ask members in our class to try and roll their tongues to form a U shape. Okay, now you are going to have to count the number of students who are going to be able to roll their tongues, and then you are going to be to also count the number of students who are not able to roll their tongues. Okay, so to roll tongues, for those who are not understanding what we're talking about ngati kuwanisa kupinda lilime kuti likhale ngati mu shape ya U. So pali anthu ena amakwanisa, and then pali anthu ena kuti they cannot be able to do that. So when you are going to collect that data, you are going to see that you only have 2 sets of data. Okay, you are going to discover that you have people who can be able to roll their tongues, and you also have other people who are able. Okay, you are going to see that you you are going to see that you have people who are able to roll their tongues and you have people who are not able to roll their tongues. Okay, so you can see that this characteristic therefore has two distinct variations and is an example of discontinuous variation. Okay, so let us proceed to more examples. We have examples of discontinuous variation in plants, and you can see that we have leaf venation, we have parallel venation and network venation. Can you mention the plants that have parallel venation?
Maize.
Yeah, maize, glass, all glass plants, they have parallel venation. And network venation?
Nani grass plants.
Okay, fine. Let us proceed. Don't mind the laugh. Okay. Okay, fine. So an example of a network venation plant is going to be leguminous plants and all that. Now, we could also have flower color in garden peas. Okay, so it would be either red or pink. You can see we have distinct differences. We can also have pod shape. Okay, it can be inflated or constricted. Now, let us look at the examples of discontinuous variation in animals. Of course, you know most of these things in as if it was when I was introducing the topic, but just to like maybe go back, we said we have sex, whether male or female. We have blood groups. We have blood group A, blood group B, AB, or O. We can also have skin coat. It can be rough or smooth. Examples of smooth skin, I'm going to say humans. What are examples of smooth skin that you know? And rough skin?
Crocodile.
Okay, fine. Now, let us look at continuous variation. So, we discussed that discontinuous variation has distinct differences. But here, continuous variation means that we have a lot of slight differences in a given characteristic in individuals in a given species. I've just paraphrased the definition there. I'm going to write it as a comment in the comment section. So we have, for example, we can say height. Kabena, we can say age, right? For example, so I ask to 20 to come in front. Can 20 students come in front? Oh, okay, I forgot this is online. So 20 students come in front, and then we're going to ask each of you, what is your age? What is your age? What is your age? It's not like we're going to have 3 answers. No, we're going to have different answers. Someone is going to be 25 years and 2 months. And so on and so forth. So those are very slight differences, and there are lots of them because we are looking at a big like sample size. So that is an example of a continuous variation. Now the differences range from one extreme end to another with many intermediate forms in between. We could also use that as a definition. Okay, so the differences in a continuous variation, they range from one extreme end to another with intermediate forms in between. So it's like if we have the lowest age, for example, to be 18 years old and the highest age to be 21 years old. In between, we're going to have, for example, 19 3 months, 21 7 months, 22, and so on and so forth. I don't know the cut off age in the guys in that. Okay, fine. Let me continue. Another example of continuous variation that you could do is height. People are going to have different heights, really. As nima centimeter and something like that. That is an example of continuous variation. So the activity that you could do is you could have like a group of say five students, and then you ask each member to stand straight against a vertical wall. Now, what happens is you need to take a meter ruler, and then you measure the height from the heel to the top of the head. And then you should record the heights in a notebook, and then you should get the heights that other groups did. You are going to see that even in your own group, you are going to have an array of different values. And when you get the heights from the other groups, you are going to see that they also have varying figures of heights. You see? So it's like all these are variations. And what type of variations? Continuous variations, because there are a lot of intermediary values. Anyway, next up, we're going to discuss about Mendelian genetics. But so far, this is the end of the lesson on variations. I hope you have understood what variations are all about. I think you have also had your introduction to the topic of genetics. And I hope with that background knowledge, we're really going to have a smooth ride when we discuss about what this Gregory Mendel has in stock for us. I'll see you in the next lesson.